7 silent ways God makes people regret losing you. There are moments in life when losing someone doesn't happen with noise or drama. It happens quietly. One day they stop calling. One day they stop choosing you. One day you realize you were giving your heart to people who never planned to protect it. And the deepest pain is not that they left. It's that they left without realizing what they were walking away from. If you are listening to this, chances are you loved sincerely. You showed up. You forgave more than you should have. You stayed longer than was healthy. And when they walked away, a part of you wondered if you were not enough, if you said too much, or if you should have tried harder to keep them. But the Bible teaches us something radically different from the way the world thinks. God does not ask you to chase those who leave. He asks you to become who you were created to be. This message is not about revenge. It is not about manipulating emotions or proving your worth to anyone. It is about quiet strength. It is about spiritual maturity. It is about allowing God to work so deeply in you that the absence of your presence becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. According to Scripture, the most powerful responses are often silent, unseen, and rooted in obedience. Some people only recognize value after it is gone, not because you changed to impress them, but because God changed you to protect you. When you stop begging for understanding and start walking in truth, something shifts. Peace replaces chaos. Clarity replaces confusion. And without you saying a word, those who left begin to feel the weight of what they lost. Jesus never chased those who rejected him. He kept walking in purpose. He loved without attachment. He trusted the Father with the outcome. And in that same way, when you walk with God instead of clinging to people, regret forms naturally, not because you intended it, but because light always exposes what darkness could not keep. Tonight we are going to talk about 7 silent biblical ways that God uses your growth, your obedience, and your restraint to bring revelation to those who walked away, not so you can feel superior, but so you can feel free. Number 1, stop chasing. Let God be the one who remembers you. One of the hardest things to do after someone walks away is to stop reaching for them. Not reaching for answers, not reaching for closure, not reaching to explain your heart one more time. Everything in you wants to be understood. Everything in you wants them to see what they lost. But the Bible teaches something deeply uncomfortable and deeply powerful. When someone chooses to leave, your strength is not found in pursuit. It is found in surrender. When you chase people who walked away, you unintentionally tell them they were right to leave. You place them in a position of authority they were never meant to hold. Scripture reminds us that if God allows a door to close, forcing it back open will only delay the peace He is trying to give you. Sometimes God removes people not to punish you, but to protect you. And when you keep chasing, you fight the very rescue He arranged. Silence is not weakness. In the Bible, restraint is often a sign of trust. When you stop defending yourself, stop explaining your intentions, stop trying to correct how others misunderstood you, God steps in as your witness. He remembers what you carried. He remembers what you gave. He remembers what they dismissed. And He does not forget. There is a strange shift that happens when you finally let go. At first, it feels like loss, but then it becomes freedom. You realize how much energy you were spending trying to be chosen by people who were never called to keep you. And without you saying a word, the absence of your presence begins to speak. People often don't feel regret when you beg them to stay. They feel it when they realize you no longer need them to move forward. Jesus Himself showed us this pattern. When people rejected Him, He did not argue. He did not chase crowds that walked away. He continued in obedience. And history remembers Him, while those who dismissed Him were left with the weight of their decision. When you stop chasing and start trusting, you allow God to handle remembrance. And God is far better at it than you will ever be. Number 2, grow in private. Let God elevate you publicly. After loss, most people want to be seen. They want their pain acknowledged. They want others to know how deeply they were hurt and how unfair it all felt. But Scripture often shows God doing His greatest work away from the spotlight. While others assume nothing is happening, God is rebuilding foundations, correcting patterns, and strengthening what was once fragile. Private growth is uncomfortable because it comes with no applause. No one claps when you learn to control your emotions. No one celebrates when you choose prayer over bitterness. No one sees the nights you wrestle with God instead of reacting in anger. But heaven sees, and what grows in secret with God cannot be ignored forever. When people leave, they often expect you to break. They expect to hear that you are struggling, stuck, or still emotionally tied to them. What they don't expect is transformation. They don't expect peace in your voice, clarity in your decisions, or wisdom in how you carry yourself. That kind of change creates a quiet disturbance, not jealousy, realization. They begin to see that while they walked away, God stepped in. The Bible is full of people who were prepared in isolation before being revealed in purpose. Moses spent years in the wilderness. David was shaped in fields no one watched. Even Jesus spent most of his life in obscurity before stepping into public ministry. God is never in a rush to display what is not ready to last. When God elevates you, it won't be because you announced your growth. It will be because your character speaks before your words do. And the regret people feel won't come from seeing your success. It will come from recognizing they left before the best version of you was revealed. Number 3, forgive fully without reopening the door. One of the most misunderstood teachings in Christianity is forgiveness. Many people believe forgiving someone means giving them access again, explaining your healing, or pretending nothing ever happened. But the Bible never commands you to return to what broke you. Forgiveness is not an invitation, it is a release. When you forgive silently, without announcements or emotional speeches, you take your power back. You stop carrying the weight of offense, and you place it where it belongs, in God's hands. Forgiveness frees your spirit from bitterness, but wisdom guards your boundaries. Jesus forgave many, yet He did not entrust everyone with His heart. Love and discernment were never in conflict. There is something deeply unsettling to people when they realize you are no longer angry, yet no longer available. They expect resentment. They expect tension. What they don't expect is peace with distance. That quiet shift often causes reflection, not because you confronted them, but because you didn't need to. Forgiveness without reconnection communicates maturity. It says, I healed without you. It says, I trusted God enough to let go. And often that realization hurts more than any argument ever could. Regret forms not when you demand accountability, but when someone recognizes that they no longer have access to the version of you they once took for granted. In Scripture, forgiveness is an act of obedience, not negotiation. When you forgive and keep moving forward, you break spiritual chains, not just for yourself, but for the story God is writing through you. Number 4, replace emotional reactivity with God-centered peace. When people walk away, they often expect a reaction. They expect tears, anger, long messages, explanations, or emotional collapse. The world is conditioned to measure value by response. But Scripture points us in a different direction. The Bible teaches that true strength is revealed in restraint, and peace is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of God in the middle of it. Choosing not to react emotionally does not mean you are unaffected. It means you have learned where to place your pain. Instead of turning it outward in words you may later regret, you take it inward to God, where it can be healed. This kind of discipline is rare, and because it is rare, it is powerful. People expect noise from loss. When they encounter calm instead, it unsettles them. Biblical peace is not passive. It is anchored. It comes from trusting that God saw everything you endured and that nothing was wasted. When you stop reacting impulsively, stop checking for messages, stop replaying conversations, stop seeking emotional validation, you create space for God's peace to settle. And that peace changes how you speak, how you walk, and how you decide. Those who left often begin to notice something they cannot explain. You are no longer emotionally available for chaos. You are no longer triggered by what once controlled you. Without saying a word, your peace communicates that God has become your source, not their approval. And that realization is often what leads to regret, not because you confronted them, but because they can no longer disturb what God has stabilized. The Bible tells us that the peace God gives surpasses understanding. That means it does not need to be explained. It only needs to be lived. And when you live it consistently, others begin to see clearly what they lost access to when they walked away. Number 5, walk in purpose, not to prove anything, but to obey God. After being left, there is a subtle temptation that creeps into the heart. It is the desire to prove something, to succeed so others can see they were wrong, to shine so brightly that regret becomes obvious. But the Bible warns us that living to prove a point will always exhaust you, while living in obedience will always sustain you. God never called you to perform for those who walked away. He called you to walk in purpose. When your focus shifts from being seen to being sent, everything changes. Purpose anchors you. It gives direction to your pain. Instead of replaying what ended, you begin investing in what God is building. And when your life aligns with God's assignment, growth becomes natural. Peace becomes consistent. Joy becomes rooted. Not because life is perfect, but because your life is finally centered. People who leave often do so because they cannot see where God is taking you. They judge the present without understanding the process. But when you commit yourself to purpose, fruit begins to appear. Not overnight, not loudly, but undeniably. And fruit does not need explanation. It speaks for itself. Regret often forms when people realize they underestimated someone who was still becoming. They left while God was still shelling you, still preparing you, still positioning you. When they later see clarity in your decisions, confidence in your walk, and stability in your life, it hits them quietly. They didn't lose someone ordinary. They walked away from someone called. Walking in purpose is not about revenge. It is about responsibility. Responsibility to steward what God placed inside you. And when you do that faithfully, those who left are left with a realization you never had to announce. Number 6, love again, but with wisdom, boundaries, and God first. One of the quiet fears after loss is the fear of loving again. Not because the heart no longer wants love, but because it remembers the cost. Pain has a way of teaching caution, and without God, that caution can harden into walls. But Scripture never calls us to close our hearts. It calls us to guard them wisely. Loving again does not mean repeating old patterns. It means allowing God to redefine how love flows through you. This time, love is not driven by attachment, fear of loss, or the need to be chosen. It is rooted in discernment, patience, and alignment with God's will. When God comes first, love becomes healthier, because it is no longer desperate. Those who walked away often expect you to become guarded, bitter, or emotionally unavailable forever. They assume the damage they caused will follow you into every future relationship. What they don't expect is healed love. Love that is calm, steady, and selective. Love that no longer overextends or self-abandons to keep someone close. There is a quiet sting in realizing you did not break someone. You refined them. When people see you loving again, but differently, they begin to understand that access to your heart was once a privilege, not an entitlement. And that realization often brings regret, not because you replaced them, but because they mishandled what was sacred. The Bible teaches us that love is patient and wise. When you love again under God's guidance, you do not lose yourself. You honor what you learned. And those who once took your love lightly are left to reckon with what they failed to value when they had it. Number 7. Let God be the one who writes the ending. The deepest peace comes when you stop trying to control how the story ends. After loss, the human instinct is to want closure on our terms, to want explanations, apologies, or acknowledgement of pain. But the Bible reminds us that God is not only present in the beginning and the middle of our stories, He is faithful to complete them. And when God writes the ending, nothing is missing. People may walk out of your life mid-chapter, convinced they have seen enough to decide your worth, but they are never present for the full narrative. Unless God allows it, what they leave behind is not just a person. It is a future they will never fully understand. And regret often comes when people realize they exited a story God was still unfolding. When you release the need to be vindicated, something powerful happens. You trust God with justice. You trust Him with timing. You trust Him with truth. This does not mean ignoring pain. It means believing that God knows how to redeem it. Silence becomes an act of faith. Waiting becomes an act of obedience. And peace becomes your testimony. Jesus trusted the Father with every outcome, even rejection, betrayal, and loss. He did not rush to taunt those who misunderstood Him. He let resurrection speak louder than defense. In the same way, when you allow God to complete your story, the ending He writes will reveal everything that needed no explanation. Some people will never hear your side. They don't need to. When God writes the ending, truth is evident. And those who walked away are left not with bitterness, but with the quiet realization that they left too soon. Conclusion. At the end of all this, the truth is simple and freeing. You were never called to make anyone regret losing you. That burden was never yours to carry. When you walk with God, regret is not something you manufacture. It is something that forms naturally when truth becomes clear. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove your value. You don't need to replay old conversations in your mind or imagine what you would say if they came back. God saw every moment you were overlooked, every time you gave more than you received, every time you stayed silent to keep the peace. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was forgotten. The Bible shows us again and again that God honors quiet faithfulness. He blesses growth done in private. He restores hearts that choose obedience over resentment. And He protects those who trust Him enough to let go. When you stop chasing people and start walking with God, your life becomes a testimony without words. If someone regrets losing you, let that be between them and God. Your responsibility is not to look back. It is to move forward, forward in peace, forward in wisdom, forward in love that is no longer reckless, but refined. The person you are becoming is more important than the people who couldn't stay. So rest, release, and trust. God is not finished with you, and the story He is writing will always be greater than the chapter someone chose to leave behind.